Wait a second. Why would the belief in the existence of spirits go against all those sciences?
Because I can tell you what would change my mind and make me believe in astrology.
The horoscopes that are in the
Yeah.
newspapers. That's a different thing. That's not proper astrology.
How sure are you that whatever your version of astrology is correct, is like it's factually true and can pass some tests? Hi, my name is Ariel Pontes, and today I'm going to be talking to Adrian Cotora. Adrian is the vice president of the Romanian Astrologers Association, and as you can imagine, he believes the position of planets in the sky at the time of our birth correlates with different personality traits. I, on the other hand, as a naturalistic atheist, don't believe the position of planets correlate in any way with our personality. In this conversation, we discuss how our different epistemic values lead us to these different conclusions, and we also discuss the possibility of a reformed astrology that focuses on its value as a potential psychological tool for exploring our relationships with different archetypes, while avoiding untestable claims about the nature of the universe. So, what do you think? Is astrology real? So, I'm here with Adi Cotora. Thanks for joining me, Adi.
Hi, Ariel. Happy to be here.
Can you give us a short introduction?
I'm Adrian Cotora. I'm a Tantra yoga instructor, also a translator from French, English, and Latin. And I'm also involved in the Romanian Astrologers Association. And I've studied philosophy. I have a PhD in philosophy with on the subject of astrology. So this area of my life, I think, is the main target of this discussion.
Thank you. So the first question I like to ask is what do you think we have in common or where we agree on?
Well, first of all, maybe you present your perspective and your standpoint to see then where this agreement.
Yeah. Well, so I don't believe that astrology is factually true. So that's where we disagree. To start where we disagree.
I can find an agreement point here that you have strong beliefs.
Yeah, definitely. What I would say that we have in common is that we are passionate about our interests. So in the same way, I mean, you have a job as a translator, like I have a job as a developer, but in our free time, we actually take our passions quite seriously, and we try to get involved with the things that matter to us. This is something that I think we have in common. I mean, ideological to some degree, but our beliefs, basically the beliefs that we have about philosophy, our philosophical beliefs, are important to us, and we try to pursue that. Would you say that makes sense to you?
Yes, a lot of sense.
Yeah. But yes, definitely where we disagree would be on the part of astrology and whether it's real or not, I would say. And there, clearly, my view is that it's not real, or I mean, it may be something that helps people, and it may be something that could potentially develop in a direction that becomes not if it stops focusing so much uh, on on this claim that it's actually empirically true, that you can actually make statements about people's personalities on the basis of the position of stars and stuff like that. If it moves away from this and gets to something more exploratory, then I would be less inclined to say that. I wouldn't say that I don't believe in it. I would just say that I'm not informed about it. But the way it's presented in the mainstream today as actually like something that you can be used to predict the future or assess people's personalities, this I don't believe.
But what about that direction that you are pointing to? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me a bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, the thing is, throughout my life, when in my teens, I was about, I was 16, 15, something like that, when I stopped believing in God. I was raised in a religious family. They had many spiritual beliefs. They weren't particularly Christian or anything, but they were nominally Christian, and in practice in Brazil, it's a minority. Well, actually, it's a pretty big religion in Brazil, but nobody knows about it. It's Kardecist Spiritism. They were very aligned with this, and they
Yeah.
believed. I grew up with my mom telling me that I'm Pisces, and that's why I do this and that, and blah blah. So I'm used to this. But when I stopped believing in God, I kind of started looking at everything and stopped believing everything that didn't have scientific evidence to back it up.
About your background, I found out that when Avatar was launched in cinemas all over the world, in Brazil it was the um, premiere of Chico Xavier's No Solar
Ah,
movie, and
yes.
more people from Brazil went to this movie than
Hmm.
to Avatar.
Oh,
So
really?
they surpassed the ratings. So
Yeah,
it's really big than this
it
spiritualism
is. Yeah,
doctrine.
Chico Xavier is huge. Yeah, I've been to this movie with about him in the cinema when I was a kid. Yeah,
Great guy.
that's what I grew up with. As you can imagine, I don't believe that he had any supernatural powers. I'm sure. I mean, I don't know much about his the history of him, so I don't know if how good a person he was. But yeah, I definitely don't believe in the supernatural aspect of it. And what I used to say is that, well, I in my utopia, astrology just wouldn't exist. I used to try to convince people that no, astrology is false. You should just like leave it to the history. Yeah, there's nothing we know now with science that is just not true, and there's no point. But now, after talking to enough people, and I don't know, after a few years of growing up and everything, I realized that okay, maybe I'm being too dismissive. This is it's a huge cultural phenomenon for some reason, and people like it for some reason, and it probably helps them in some ways. And that's why wanted to have this dialogue, because I mean, can we converge in any way is what I wonder, because I do think that believing factually that that you can actually empirically determine traits, personality traits based on the stars and based on when people are born, to really believe this, the way I see this, is dangerous, because it's just like a bad epistemology. And I see this as something dangerous in the same way that, not believing in vaccines can be dangerous.
So anyway, until now, I don't get any Pisces vibes from you. So that's
No,
the
no, it's
first place.
my mom is Pisces. I'm not.
Ah,
You can try to guess what I am.
I thought that you said that your mother was saying that you were Pisces.
No, no, she was saying that she's Pisces. Yeah,
Ah,
she would
okay,
say,
okay.
I was quoting her. She still
Right.
says today things like, don't mind me, I'm a Pisces, that's why I did that, or something like this.
Okay, okay.
That's her, yeah.
But it was interesting from what you said until now that you said that you don't believe in any of Chico Xavier's
Hmm.
stuff, but you don't know much about it. So there is a lot of a priori thinking in this statement of yours. And when you were speaking about the possibility to envisage a certain utility of astrology, you were kind of switching from a priori to a posteriori. So, in case it changes the perspective towards something that is not based on principles, but is something exploratory.
It can be still based on some principles, just not the factual claims that are associated with astrology today. This is what I don't believe in. And going back to Chico Xavier, I know enough about what I know about him is that he used to be a psychographer. So he would just claim to be speaking through spirits. Like it's like a spirit is coming inside me and taking over my body, and now I'm writing. I don't believe in spirits, and I don't believe in psychography, so I don't believe in any of that. And what he's famous for this, talking, communicating with the spiritual world. So basically, I don't believe in anything that he did. I mean, maybe he was a good person, maybe he helped people, maybe he genuinely believed in what he was doing, but in that case, I think he was delusional, even if well intended.
But what an delusion that was, because if you go through his life, it was amazing uh, the deeds that he done. So he wrote like over 400 books.
Yeah,
That's that's very
yeah,
hard to even grasp.
yeah, but it doesn't require supernatural abilities, right?
Yeah,
But anyway, like I don't want to get too sidetracked here with Chico Xavier. Where would you say you stand on astrology? So you really think that you can actually predict empirically a personality. You can use astrology to determine a person's birth date. Could you do that? Like, how does it work exactly, like factually?
Well, it goes the other way around. You
Hmm.
take the birth data and
Mm-hmm.
then you try to figure out certain aspects of their constitution, of their motivations, their
Mm-hmm.
drive, and also you can see some directions. You can see whether doing something could benefit the project that that person is dedicated to or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can see if certain disagreements between people can be somehow harmonized by
Mm-hmm.
focusing on some aspects and not on others.
Mm-hmm.
And but anyway, there are many uses of astrology. So we could say that as many astrologers as many astrologies,
Okay.
because it is very very vast, this domain, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why maybe also for this reason astrology survived uh, regardless what happened to it.
Mm-hmm.
So because there were like huge cataclysms that astrology was subjected to, and it managed to survive nevertheless. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the theories that are behind this unbelievable capacity to survive is that the plethora of techniques somehow represented a second level of roots that kept astrology into place, although the deeper roots were cut by uh, all kinds of things. Like, for instance, the discovery of the precession of the equinoxes that
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask about that actually.
Hipparchus discovered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is a huge thing.
Yeah. Can you explain a bit? Because I don't know how much people will know about it.
Yeah, well, Hipparchus realized in second century BC that there is a slight movement
Mm-hmm.
of the vernal point. So
Mm-hmm.
each year, the spring equinox is happening to distance than the previous
Mm-hmm.
year, and this makes that in time appears modification of the constellations.
Yeah.
So this precession of the equinoxes makes that today, when we look at the sky and we see that there is a certain constellation, it does not correspond with the astrological sign, except
Exactly.
for the fact if you practice a sidereal type of astrology, as the Indians do. And
Mm-hmm.
there are also proponents of the sidereal astrology also in
Yeah.
the Western world. And then there is it's still kept in place, that correlation between the astrological signs and the constellations, but there has to be made some adjustments, because
Mm-hmm.
now in the Western astrology, in the tropical astrology, as it is said, each zodiacal sign has 30 degrees, but
Mm-hmm.
the constellations uh, are different. So there are some that have more than 30 degrees, other less. And so it was done, this adjustment, from the very beginning of astrology. And so this was a huge thing that happened early on.
Yeah, and how did it impact astrology?
Well, it impacted astrology by the fact that the zodiac was not any longer determined by the beginning of the constellation of Aries,
Mm-hmm.
um, but from the vernal equinox. So
Yeah.
wherever
Mm-hmm.
the vernal equinox happens to be, that's the beginning of the zodiac. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have 30 degrees, one after another, that
Yeah.
constitute the.
So it's more associated to the seasons than the constellations.
Uh, yes,
Yeah, and what do you think does that say? Do you take that as being proof that perhaps what astrology is really trying to track is not really the stars? That I mean, it was the stars in the past, but in the end, it was really just a proxy for seasons.
I'm inclined to believe that there are certain intuitions, like in the case of astrology, of a certain connection between what happens in the
Hmm.
on Earth and what happens elsewhere, but not necessarily from the beginning. All the system falls into place.
Hmm.
So even though, in a certain way, such an intuition can be right, maybe not the way people explain the correlation is the right thing.
Okay.
So this could explain that although the system changes,
Hmm.
there is a possibility of adapting to the new paradigm.
That's good. That's important. I mean, do you think that's important scientifically? And brings me to a question. Do you think astrology is a science?
Well, anyway, when we speak of sciences, they're not all on the same level. Like there are
Okay.
hard sciences
Mm-hmm.
and soft sciences.
Yeah.
Uh, there is mathematics,
Mm-hmm.
which is harder than physics, but they're all in a certain hard nucleus of
Mm-hmm.
science. But
Yeah.
we have also psychology. We
Yeah.
have all those disciplines that many of the arguments that are brought against astrology, uh,
Mm-hmm.
those the same cases can be made against them, like the famous Barnum effect.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about this also. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I let you phrase the question if you
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah,
to make people understand. Yeah,
yeah, the Barnum effect is this effect that was discovered by a psychologist. I think actually it was four. It's also known as the Forer effect because there was a paper by this other psychologist about it. But basically, he showed he did a personality test, and then that asked people to rate. And no, first he gave a personality test, and then he gave them sort of a report on the results of this personality test. With you have these tendencies. This is your personality, and they asked people to rate how good was the report about their personality and how good was the test in determining that those traits. And they rated it very high, like uh, more than 4 out of 5, and how good it was. And it turns out that he just got the text about their people's personalities from some zodiac sign magazine, and it was just the same for everyone. He didn't even pick different signs for different people, and it was the same from everyone. And it sounds, because the statements are vague and sort of have a positive tendency, they tend to be a bit positive. Other experiments were made later that show that if you make the statements even more positive, people will agree even more. So, and those are very generic things that kind of everybody can relate to. So yeah, in the end, it was basically proof that yeah, it's very easy to fool people. We have these cognitive biases, and it's very easy to think that something applies to us, and that's very personal, when in fact it's just a generic claim. And that's what I think uh, astrology is somehow, or at least the zodiac sign horoscope in the newspaper. I think that people are attracted to that, and they think they are onto something because of this Barnum effect.
uh, okay, that's a new subject you introduced, like the horoscopes that are in the
Yeah.
newspapers. That's a different thing. That's not proper astrology.
Okay, that's
I,
something I
I
hear a
know.
lot. Yeah.
I know for a fact that people that write those columns, many of them, okay, I cannot speak for all of them, they're just putting stuff there from from the top of their head. So they're not really making uh, any analysis. They just invent things. So the, a true astrologer will never rely on those horoscopes. But as to the positive aspects that you said that predominate in such an forecast for somebody, that depends. For instance, me as a Virgo, and who are known for their critical stance on things, I rejoice when I see squares. So the squares are the aspects that are more challenging to say in an euphemistic manner. So it depends anyway. But this Barnum-Forster effect is in connection with the way people can become very naive in such a situation. It has no connection with astrology, because you can take the same number of people, you put them in a class, and then you said, we have here a wonderful psychologist that can read your I don't know, can make some connection from the way you move, or like it was that movie that was in connection with the gestures somebody was making on the face, and from
Yeah,
that,
micro, yeah, the
yeah,
series, right? Lie
yeah,
to Me, I think.
lie to me, yes.
Yeah.
So we have that guy here, and he just draw here explanation for each of you separately, and here it is. It will be the same percentage of people that will say, yes, yes, this is me.
Yeah, I mean, it's true that the Barnum effect is way broader. It's not something about astrology specifically, definitely. It's a broad phenomenon that can happen in many contexts.
Yeah, but it is brought into discussion mostly in connection with astrology, and also on
Yeah.
the Wikipedia page of the uh,
Barnum
Barnum
effect,
effect,
yeah.
I think, and also on astrology, it's a Barnum effect
Yeah.
both, but they're not connected. There is just
But why not? Because
human
the
nature.
idea, yeah, but the idea is that people believe in astrology because the claims of astrology are vague and generic and can easily be applied to anyone. That's the whole point. So, like, like coming back to the science, whether
Just
you
a
think,
second,
yeah,
just a second. Those claims in that study were vague, but there are astrologers who can make pretty precise claims. Like there
okay,
are situations, for instance, when people do not know exactly their time of birth,
yeah,
and then that's an important thing, because it's in connection with the astrological houses that are connected with the different fields of life, and those change quickly. It's in connection with the diurnal movement. So in 24 hours, the whole zodiac is it's so we pass through all the signs, and there are people who, in connection with certain events that happened in their life, can identify uh, what was the precise time of birth, such as to fall into place with the other elements there.
So you're saying people can use astrology to determine their time of birth when even they
Yeah.
don't know the time of birth.
There can be made certain adjustments.
Okay, but if they don't know the time of birth, how do they know that it worked?
Um, well, first of all, the day of birth, pretty much we know it now.
Yeah, the day we
There,
know.
there are there are situations with the personalities from the past when we don't know it so much. Uh, Also, in the case of our national poet Mihai Eminescu, in that time people were declared as being born in a certain day, but it was there were many factors that were taken into consideration. So um, there are researches, and also Mihaela Dicu made the study very well done in this respect, and it's the correct date of birth would be a few days apart from the official one.
And but how did she do this study? Like based on astrology?
Um, no, no, not
Or
only.
no?
No.
Okay. But also astrology.
Anyway, I could get you interested to read it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but I mean, what puzzles me is here is that I mean, if nobody knows, then you cannot, then you make a guess based on astrology that I think this was the time of birth. You cannot confirm it or falsify it, so you will never know if it's really working, right?
Okay, the falsifying concept is brought into this, like this takes the discussion on a whole different level,
Yeah, this is
because
an important concept we should
when
definitely
we
cover.
speak when we speak about falsifying a certain doctrine or a certain statement, then all the inductive reasoning is no longer accepted. And
Yeah, the classic argument. Okay.
but the induction is used in many fields, uh, also in the soft sciences. You can use it. So leaving the falsification apart and returning to a certain type of reasoning that could lead to a conclusion, if you know the main events of your life, when they happened exactly, there are
Hmm.
certain techniques that can see that all those main events, so there are several, like when you draw a line,
Hmm.
uh, you have one point. To that point, you can draw an infinity of lines.
Okay.
You have
Yeah.
you have 2 points.
Hmm.
There is one line.
Yeah.
You know. So
Hmm.
if you have two, three, four, 5 points on the same line, it shows something.
Hmm.
It's not showing as much as to withstand the proof of
Falsifiability.
falsifiability,
Yeah.
but there are reasons to take it into consideration more than others. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think we should go back a little bit to falsifiability because that's an important concept, and that's what I would say. Like, you said there are many different sciences. Some are harder, some are softer. I agree, but they all have this. They have some core principles in common, which define them as being scientific, which is they are open to revision, and they are most claims are open to falsification. They are updated. They are all updated with new data. And this is what I think doesn't happen in astrology. Astrology cannot be disconfirmed in any way. There's not, I mean, is there anything that would make you change your mind about astrology?
at the core of this theory of Popper uh, lies a comparison between um, the hard sciences and the pseudosciences, in which it was Marxism and
Hmm.
psychoanalysis,
Yeah.
Freud's
Hmm.
psychoanalysis.
Hmm.
So, if you were to ask people how many of them think that psychoanalysis is a science in comparison with astrology, the answer would be disproportionate to say that, of course, psychoanalysis is well, more serious
But who would say that? You
theory.
mean the average person on the streets?
If you compare it with astrology, I think
Hmm.
even the hard scientist would
Okay.
say, well, maybe
Hmm.
psychoanalysis is not as strong as physics,
Hmm.
but
It's
astrology
better.
is out of the question. And
Okay.
yet,
Fair
and
enough.
yet, the argumentation is the same,
Hmm.
because it's the same. You can find something changes. You make a prediction about the reason for why somebody has a trauma, and then
Mhm.
you realize that no, it was the opposite, and also the opposite goes.
But I also don't believe in psychoanalysis. I mean, I think I agree with you to some degree. I mean, I think it's a bit tricky to compare. Like the history of astrology and the history of psychoanalysis are very different. I mean, Freud was kind of innovating in his field. He was sort of in the period right before science started to be, developed more clearly as a method, and the philosophy of science started taking off. So he was kind of in the beginning of science. So I guess I would forgive him a little bit more because of this. While astrology has existed for so long and it's always been unable to predict things, and I mean, maybe in the past when it was more mixed with astronomy, it could predict certain things, but now, in any case, I think I think Marxism, Freudian psychoanalysis, and astrology are all equally pseudoscientific and really incapable of making any predictions or,
But
yeah.
wait a second. The problem is not that they cannot make predictions, because they can, and they make them.
Yeah, but they cannot be checked. You cannot test if the prediction was correct.
Well, there are
Well,
situations when you can do
in
that. But
physics you can. In physics you say, "Oh, this comet is gonna appear on this date," and you wait there, and you're like, "Look, this is the day. Let's go check," and it goes exactly where you expected. You confirm the prediction. But in
no,
astrology, you cannot
no.
confirm the prediction.
Yes, you can, but that's not the problem of falsifiability,
It
because
is because if you
no,
don't see the
just a
comet, then you're
second.
like, "Wait, then
No.
something went wrong.
Look,
My hypotheses were falsified."
we had a big astrologer from France invited over in Bucharest,
Mhm.
Maurice Charvet, and this was before a huge football match. It was, I think, Romania-Hungary some years ago,
Mhm.
and the workshop he held was on Saturday, and the match was on Sunday, and the conference was on 2 days, so we were able also to meet with him on Sunday. So, to see. Anyway, and on Saturday he was asked to make a prediction about the match,
Mhm. Yeah.
and he made analysis. He showed where he drew his conclusions from, and he said that it will be a draw match.
Mhm.
And I don't remember exactly if he said that it will be 1-1.
Mhm.
This I don't remember. Anyway, it was
Mhm.
1-1. It was
Mhm.
1-0.
Mhm.
So next day he was a star. Anyway,
Mhm.
he came as a
Yeah.
star of the event, but he was like really applauded because of that. So
Yeah.
that's a prediction that you can check.
Yeah,
But
but this is one like that's the thing because there are many predictions that are made in the mystics make many predictions, and when they
yes,
are right, they use that as evidence that they look, I was confirmed to be right. But every other, the 90% of the time when they're wrong, that doesn't falsify the theory.
that's
It's just ignored.
yeah, that's what I said. That not the fact that you make a prediction. That's not something that puts at stake the falsifiability.
Well,
In order to put it at stake, you need to imagine a certain way of looking at things to see whether this prediction it's a huge one. This will invalidate the theory. It's not that people have some principles and they make interpretation
mhm.
according to their knowledge, and then uh, what can be falsified there is their knowledge of astrology. Because if there's an astrologer who make false claims about something in the future, and then those things happen or don't happen,
Okay.
then their knowledge is put into at
Mhm.
risk.
But
Not
yeah, this brings me to another principle of science, which is important, which is replication. I mean, in physics, if you make a prediction and you test it and it's confirmed, you do it again and you do it again and again. And if one time it comes out wrong, that's enough to put a lot of doubt on your hypothesis. So basically, but in astrology, you can make nine wrong predictions and one correct one, and that's somehow proof that it works. This is what it's hard for me to understand.
Yeah, I like to to mention paraphrase from Origenes, who was a father of the church, who was saying that astrology is correct because what the planets represent is the handwriting of God. But the problem is that only the angels can understand that writing, and the people cannot. So he was basically saying that the fact that you can be wrong in the practice of astrology is in connection with our human limitations and our incapacities to correctly read uh, handwriting that is.
Okay. I mean, it seems to me like this argument can be used to defend anything that doesn't work. For example, the homeopathy also like, yeah, when it doesn't work, it's because we failed as humans. And I mean, that's the problem that I see with most of these claims that are associated with the supernatural. They just there's no way that there's nothing that could come up. I mean, in your case in particular, is there anything that if this happened, if enough times, if something happened enough times, you would stop believing in astrology? Is there anything that would make you stop believing?
um, I think I should make some soul searching to see exactly what that would be.
Yeah, because I can easily tell you what would change my mind and make me believe in astrology.
Tell
It's
me.
just something simple like an app where I can input sufficient information about my personality and my struggles, and it can guess my zodiac sign with better than chance, better than random guessing.
Better than
Even,
chance, that's
yeah.
easy. Better
Mhm.
than chance. That's an
Yeah,
easy thing, and astrology points high in many fields that
but
are
where
better than chance.
it
Like for
hasn't been, it hasn't been done.
like no, but there were many studies done and that showed correlation between the sun sign and the profession that people choose, and that's
Mhm.
way before the way beyond the statistical
Mhm.
probability. So there are many things like this. So you are in the field of supporting astrology already. There's
No, I
no.
mean there are you can. I mean these things about the star sign. This is something that I was reading about the other day. How nowadays some astrologers or some people in who are into astrology are using this to kind of show, aha, see, astrology was right all along. Because there have been some studies, some recent studies that show that it's true that when you're born affects certain personality traits, and there are some correlations that are we are starting to learn about this right now. There is also spurious correlations. That's also a thing. That there are some. There's this website where you can check like a lot of random things that correlate, like number of pirates and global warming, and there's things that seem to be very related, even though they have nothing to do with one another. This could be an example, but there is also these studies of seasonal biology and other fields like this that are starting to see, okay, there are certain personality traits that are associated with being born in the winter or in the summer, and there are some attempts at explaining this. And it could be that astrologers historically have been trying to see these patterns, and they have perhaps succeeded to some extent. But the thing is, if you cannot make a predictable claim, if you cannot test, if you cannot confirm, if you're okay, I made a prediction, did it work, I made it again, is it always, if it's working more than 50% of the time, if it's working better than chance,
But it's working
then
better than chance, and that's established.
that's what I'm not. Show me a paper then, because I'm not aware of. And this would revolutionize science if you prove that you
No,
know
because bec-
astrology can make
because
predictions.
because Karl Popper went way beyond this. It's not about confirming. You're speaking about what can confirm it, and
Mhm.
Karl Popper is not interested in
Yeah,
confirming
yeah.
it, but
When I say
in
okay,
in in showing the fact that something would make it non-functional,
hmm
whether it would be to happen. So it's different. If we go on this path of confirmation, there are many
hmm
many possibilities to do it.
Just to clarify something. Yeah, so this whole the concept of falsifiability, which is important in science. Yeah, sometimes I use the word confirm, but what I mean here is to uh, falsification is sort of binary. Like once, although even that's debatable, but it's more binary than confirmation. So for if something goes completely against what you expected, what you predicted, then basically your theory is pretty bad. Then you have to change it. Your assumptions are wrong. But if you when you confirm, what I mean by confirm is you add weight to the hypothesis, you add credence to it, but it's never sure, it's never fully confirmed. It's always open to the possibility that it will be falsified.
Yes, it's
So
true.
that's how I use this
It's
word.
true. It's true, and that's why, in this sense, it will never be like mathematics.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's also because there are many um, variables that can be
hmm
taken into consideration.
hmm
Uh, it's that situation with the Maurice Charvet that I said. Okay, he analyzed a lot of aspects, and then it
hmm
was
hmm
that conclusion that it must be like this.
hmm
Uh, but there are many other aspects because it's very like the bricks that the astrologer has at his or her disposal are many, and also the techniques that arrange those bricks
hmm
are many. So one one of them could obtain a big success because he chooses certain techniques and then those work in certain fields, and then he confirms.
But that's the
Uh,
thing. It works in a very anecdotal sense. Like, oh, when the astrologer is dealing with a client and they're working together and the client has a revelation, they're like, oh my God, that's so true. But again, they could be victim of the Barnum effect. They have the sense that it's so true and it's really as a generic statement. Or there could be many factors that make somebody believe that. But when if
yes,
you try to be methodical about it and actually
it could be.
guess people's sign, people's date of birth, this has not been done. Nobody can reliably, better than chance, guess somebody's zodiac sign. You could easily make an app,
Okay,
like a simple
okay,
website.
we could do something like this recording. I could post it on some astrological
Mhm.
discussion groups.
Sure.
Uh, but that would be important for your birth sign not to be available anywhere on
Ah,
internet, you know.
okay.
And then to tell them what do you think from what you see, and we can make a poll and to see what
Uh-huh.
we make 12 possibilities
hmm
to tick the boxes.
Yeah,
Okay, and that
that's
would be
good.
something interesting
What
to
if,
see. But
what if it comes out totally random and people don't get it right? What would that make you a bit
let's
more skeptical about astrology or not really?
let's make it.
Sure. The problem
Let's
is
make
that
it.
my date of birth is very available. I mean, I have data, leaking everywhere about me, so it's a bit tricky. But yeah, I mean, you
Maybe
can you
maybe
can
we can
post it.
imagine. Maybe we
Yeah,
can imagine we'll think of somebody who
yeah.
has no footprint on the
Yeah.
internet,
Even in my
and
case, I mean, if they don't know my name, they don't know who I am. You show just the video. I mean, I haven't introduced myself because I do this post production, so it doesn't really matter. So I guess so far they don't even know my name. So
okay, when do you post this video or
I will
this
let you know.
recording?
I can give you like the raw file first before I publish, and you can do this your experiment.
Okay, before you publish it, and
Yes,
then
for sure.
to put this one and to see the results.
hmm Yeah,
Okay.
because if it does show, if people do guess overwhelmingly my correct zodiac sign.
Anyway, you should speak more
Yeah.
about yourself. Like this is
Yeah.
what it shows is just somebody who has a certain uh,
hmm Yeah.
vivacity on an intellectual side and is
Yeah.
interested in stuff and doesn't want to take for granted the informations that are out there. But there are
hmm
many aspects to the
Yeah.
personality. And
Perhaps it would be better if I could, for example, if you could get a group of people, a group of astrologers, and have them all talk to someone and interview them in any way, but not without asking the date of birth and time of birth, etc. And they all come up with a guess in the end.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know, on there is this online magazine. Astrele,
Okay.
uh, which is published by the
Mm-hmm.
Romanian Astrologer Association, and
Mm-hmm.
there um, topics that are discussed, and the people have um, to identify. It's like a homework that they
Mm-hmm.
get, and that would be also interesting to see some results taken from
Yeah.
there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because there are many such things. It's just that because we talked about Popper, Popper raises the bar so high
Mm-hmm.
that it's completely out of this type of discussion where we confirm something that somebody is interpreting.
But
You
why
know,
you say he raises the bar so high?
because
Because
look for
Marxism is
instance,
out, astrology is out, and
yeah,
Freudian psychoanalysis are out, and
yeah,
these are all somehow legitimate and shouldn't
yeah,
be thrown out.
but also
Is that?
any discipline that is in connection with a certain way of looking at things, like
Mm-hmm.
the hermeneutics, anything that interprets uh, something given.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
for instance, now it's very trendy, this theory with the attachment styles of one's personality. You know,
Yeah.
put the falsifiability on this.
But there are some studies there showing some patterns, making some
Yeah,
predictions that they are able. I mean, it's a sort of somewhat new science, this specific theory of attachment, but it does have some
yes, but
things
there are
backing it up.
studies that confirm the theory, or that are studies specifically tailored, such as to invalidate it. That's why
Well,
I said that it's very high, that bar.
I haven't read like the academic papers themselves. I just read like a book which was more for the general public. But I assume that if they were done with proper academic rigor, then they did have criterion for falsification. That's what I would assume. Even though it's true that in certain soft sciences it's a bit harder, but still there is always, the spirit is still there of trying to disconfirm, trying to be open for updating, for
That's a lot also in
revision.
astrology. You know, that's a lot also in astrology, and there are many debates.
I
Like if
don't see that so much in astrology.
but you don't see it, you're not so much involved in the
It's
phenomena.
true, but every
You
time
don't
I
see.
ask, I mean, I haven't been shown, like, I've looked it up and I haven't seen like a single study that's trying to
But yeah,
falsify astrology. And the
okay,
ones that I have succeeded in falsifying
but
astrology. And
there
just the
are
astrologers, they just say, no, it's a conspiracy or something. For
there are
example, yeah.
yeah, there are two layers. So
Uh-huh.
one layer is this that speaks about the astrology in itself, like uh, the principle itself of any connection between what happens here and what happens there, out
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
That's one thing, and another thing is the validity of certain interpretation based on those principles that all astrology agrees upon. You know,
Hmm.
so there are different things. I was speaking about many discussions about the validity of the interpretation
Hmm.
that some are making of something, but
Hmm.
with uh, correlation to the principle, where all the astrology agrees that there is that connection, but also the type of connection, and what every brick that I mentioned about is meaning, that there is also a debate there.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Like I said, I haven't seen. I am glad if this is happening to some degree. I think that's good, but I haven't seen like a proper tests. Only the proper tests that I've seen confirm that. Yeah, it doesn't really work, and that's. I'm curious. What do you think about? Do you think there is such a thing as a pseudoscience? Is there something that you consider? Okay, no, this is way off. This is not true, or is pseudoscientific.
Well, for certain, for sure.
Hmm.
I don't want to name things because it's just,
In your
it's like
circles it might be hurting people.
it's like I remember an episode of Friends.
Hmm.
I don't know if you watched it. It's
Yeah, back in the day.
Ross. Ross there
Yes, I
is
remember Ross.
paleontologist,
Hmm.
and he was speaking with some guys, and so he was saying, well, those geologists are such geeks.
Yeah.
And anyway, I can imagine that from a certain perspective, the pseudoscience is filled with all sorts of disciplines.
Hmm.
But what I'm more interested in now in this
Hmm.
discussion is that there were times when, uh, like for instance, before the Copernican revolution, you know,
Hmm.
the science back then was accepted by everybody,
Hmm.
was something that later on proved to be a wrong one, a
Hmm.
pseudoscience, you can say
Yeah. Well,
somehow.
it's not necessarily. That's the thing. This is a very it's a very tricky way of phrasing it. The way you phrased it, I'm not sure I agree. I mean, it's not that it wasn't because science today, what's considered real science by mainstream scientists, is wrong about many things. I mean, this is the premise of the scientific method, that we will always be wrong about many things. And that's why we have to always be open for revision. All our claims should always be open for revision. And usually this revision is done through falsification. You try to falsify the theory. You imagine a scenario in which, okay, this should happen. If it doesn't happen, I'm wrong. And you
Okay, you're
test.
right.
Yeah, and this is the
Okay,
thing. It was still science back then. They just didn't have enough data. They couldn't know better. So they even if they were doing proper science, the best guess they had at that point was that everything revolves around the Earth. But then when somebody discovered that it doesn't, then they falsified that hypothesis, that theory, but not science itself as a methodology.
okay. Um, then I'll phrase things differently.
Hmm.
What I want to say is that this openness of science
Hmm.
uh, can lead to the fact that somewhere in the future
Hmm.
we can discover that those correlations astrology speaks about are true,
That's true. Yeah, we
and
could.
are true in a true,
In a measurable way.
falsifiable, measurable,
Hmm.
scientific way.
Yeah.
And uh, this is an opening, an openness that the majority of those that claim to stick with science do not
Hmm.
show. So that
Yeah.
certainty that that cannot be true, it's not scientific because science
Hmm.
is open in the case that XYZ.
It's true, but the thing is, you also have to understand from the perspective of the scientists. There are people who have done research. There are studies. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't have the time to go into every study of astrology, but it has been studied and it has been disproven many times. And like,
Yep.
when is it gonna be enough? Because we do. It's true that I have to at a very deep level, I have to be open to this possibility, but I'm very skeptical exactly because it has been tried and people
Okay.
have failed repeatedly.
And
So
when you manifest,
yeah,
manifest privately or publicly, that deep level is never addressed because it cannot
yeah,
be true. But
yeah. I mean,
scientifically, if we're
Mhm,
at the core of what science is all about, is
mhm.
well, there is a small window open
Yeah,
that it could be
yes,
true, and it
yes,
could be true. And all those guys, uh, maybe not those guys, because you
mhm,
say those guys anyway, they draw their conclusions from some shallow facts, but
mhm,
maybe the guys before them, those who came
mhm.
up with all these things, maybe they were in connection with some principles that were beyond what the
What we know
common
now.
knowledge of their times or our
Yeah,
times was showing.
yeah.
And
I
and
mean,
here comes also comes back Chico Xavier. Maybe maybe he was there in some point where he understood some layers of reality that.
yeah, even that, psychography. I'm ready to believe that as soon as we manage to uh, I don't know, come up with an experiment that tests.
Yeah,
Okay, let's say
yeah, but
somebody died and this person died, and you're claiming this person knew this piece of information. Or you can say, okay, there are two people who claim to be psychographers. You can say, look. uh, we will tell you one, we will say one thing in that room, and the spirit will hear, and then you both have to guess what it was.
But that
And then
happened.
if they manage to do this and replicate this experiment multiple times and show that this can be done
That
many
happened.
times, it
That
hasn't happened
happened.
because
It happened. But you don't know.
when
This
did
is
it
the
happen?
thing that
Give me
it
the
happened also
context.
with Chico Xavier. He with another fellow spiritist, they wrote together a book. Like he was starting the beginning of the sentence, and the other one was continuing with the last. So they were
Mhm.
both hearing the same spirit.
Mhm.
I very much
Yeah,
like
but again,
Chico
this
Xavier, and I'm I'm into this subject. So many people just say, "Well, no, it was never done," but there were
but it wasn't done
many things.
in a proper scientific setting. It was done like by people who believe. The people who report on the results are people who believe. That's the whole point about science, is to get rid of our biases. For example, confirmation bias. That's why they would get somebody who doesn't believe. They would isolate the variables somehow. They would put them, for example, yes, put them in separate rooms where they
True.
cannot see each other, and then you
Yes.
say, look, you both, I will go to this other place and I will say a full sentence, and you have to both guess what that sentence was. And then if you get it right, you have to do it again and
Okay.
again and again. And after you do 100 times, if you do most of the times right, then we're on
Okay.
to something. This hasn't been done.
You're
Because if
right.
it had been done,
But
they could make $1 million. Have you heard of the James Randi Prize for anybody who proves anything supernatural?
yeah, the thing is that those who are interested in doing those
Hmm.
things are those who believe in them. And
Yeah.
any experiment done by somebody who is uh, somebody who practice those disciplines or is a fan of them
Hmm.
wouldn't be taken into consideration by guys like you. So in order for
That's
you to
not
believe
true.
those things, you would need a proper scientific
Yeah.
lab to do that,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
you trust them, you trust their
I
that
trust
they
the
won't do.
scientific method. Yeah.
Yes, you trust the scientific method and the fact that they don't do anything to overcome certain aspects, like to.
To shoot down some theories. So you really think this
Yes.
is happening? You think the scientific community is like they are against astrology, and whenever
Not,
if they make an experiment and it somehow proves that astrology is wrong, they will just hide the experiment? Is this why you think?
I'm not going in that direction, and I don't want to say that, but
Well,
they're not interested in making such
it is
experiments.
true also because it doesn't seem
But
promising. It's hard to
yes,
get funding to something like this, because nobody, there was a period in the Cold War when in the United States they were doing all sorts of experiments with psychics. Nothing came out of it. Their conclusion was that nothing works. Like when it comes to when push comes to shove and you're in war and you have to win, otherwise you get killed. Then suddenly science matters a lot. And even when people do try to listen to the psychics, the truth is they don't help. They don't help in war. Astrology cannot be used in
the fact that
practice.
nothing came out of it, that's uh, maybe a statement that is not so well established, because there are many mysterious events that
Hmm.
happened and they weren't properly explained,
Hmm.
and maybe they weren't talked about so much as to listen to them on TV, But there are many experiments that have this mysterious side in them that should be investigated further on.
Yeah, but I mean, we've done repeated times, and it just at some point, everybody has their different threshold. I guess everybody draws the line somewhere different. Sure, at some level, I wouldn't say that I'm 100% sure that astrology is false. I mean, I would say I'm 90% and 95, let's say. At most 90, even I wouldn't even go as far as 99%, especially after I read these studies about, the seasonal biology and all these aspects of behavior that are associated with the date of birth. Because eventually, actually, the people who are into astrology could sort of merge. I mean, they could converge with the people who are doing these studies, and astrology could change and become somehow more compatible with science. That's for me what I see as the a best case scenario of where astrology could go.
That's an interesting idea, but I don't really see what you're saying there. Like to change. like to let go of the principle where all the interpretation are draw from.
Yeah, astrology would basically have to become more scientific in the sense of the claims that are made within astrology should be uh, open to revision, and there should be a clear path to revision. Usually, experiments that are falsifiable. So, if you're making claims about personality traits that are associated with a birthday being in a certain range, then you have to test that, and you have to check it. And so far, we don't have, like I said, an app that can predict when you were born. But in the future, it doesn't.
Wait a second. To predict where you're born from what? From your uh,
from
eyes?
a personality from a
Yeah.
personality quiz, or from an interview, from anything that doesn't reveal your birthday, but through other methods. And yeah,
For
and
sure. I bring you 10 astrologers.
yeah, we can do this
We
experiment,
can
and we
make
should do
we
it.
can make it we can make it live
Yes, let's make an experiment. This is a good challenge.
and uh, we'll see if the results they take from that situation are above I don't know the Fourier curve,
Yeah.
something that yeah.
If they're more significant than chance, if their guesses are better than chance, or if
For
they are
sure.
if they are converging, if people are also, yeah, this is a measurement also of how good the theory is. If everybody kind of agrees, guesses the same zodiac sign based on the same cues.
There are a lot of studies there that were done, and also the Mars effect, for instance.
I don't remember what is that about, the Mars effect.
There was a huge study done by the French astrologer Gauquelin,
Hmm.
and they obtained very interesting results. That their interpretation is also very debatable, but there were certain that some high profile sportsmen
Hmm.
they had Mars in a certain position,
Hmm.
you know, and
Okay.
they had analyzed a huge number of people
Hmm.
that it's not
Uh-huh. They had a
just a few
Okay, in their birth chart, Mars was on the same position, right?
in the same sector.
Uh-huh. And they could predict that, or based on what?
Okay, the interpretation is a bit debatable because that's also in connection with the astrological houses. I don't want to enter now into
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
but it shows patterns.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I see. I'm curious. How yeah, I was just mentioning, right, like how it's all a matter of degree and how confident we are, and of course in science we are always open to the possibility that something like astrology could be true in some way, although it's not clear how. But we have some degree of openness, but it's not total openness. Like I'm not a We have different levels of confidence, and like I said, I'm somewhere close to 90 or 99% sure. Well, I'm 99% sure that let's say the mainstream popular version of astrology is not true. I am maybe less sure, maybe let's say 90% sure that no version of astrology today is true. But what I'm open to is like I said, the possibility that there is something about, there are patterns in that and correlations between the moment we're born and our personality traits, and that perhaps we could discover more in the future. How sure are you that whatever your version of astrology is correct, is like it's factually true and can pass some tests? How confident are you of that? Like on a scale or from, in a percentage? It doesn't have to be like it's not a formal number. It's just like a informal way to gauge your level of confidence, your subjective level of confidence.
for the sake of the discussion, I don't want to
Yeah.
say 100%, because if it's
Yeah.
100%, then
You're
there is
not open to
no
revision.
there is no common ground for a
Yeah.
discussion
Hmm.
on this. Um, I think that also the research in the field of astrology now is in the last late period is going towards the discovery of ancient texts that weren't available
Hmm.
for the much of the Western astrology history.
Mm, interesting.
And it's also interesting that digging into the past of the discipline, as it is interesting the development of future science that could
Yeah.
show more and understand more in this respect. So lately there is more pronounced orientation of astrology towards Hellenistic astrology and to discover the text from ancient Greek
Hmm.
and from Arabic that were not translated before. And it was a lot of enthusiasm in the field because they started to um, look at this discipline from the origin point of view, and that brought many studies
Hmm.
and books.
So you wouldn't want to give a number like but it mean but you said you don't want to say 100%, so it's you're probably close to 100%. You're very confident that astrology is real.
Okay, maybe certain ways. That's why I told you that there are many uh, types of astrology,
Hmm.
uh, but it's something that I notice. you know,
Hmm.
it's something that you can notice every day. There are certain,
Yeah,
but okay, there are of course precognition involved there that
exactly.
you come with all that. But
Hmm.
so I don't want to say. Let me be next to you on the 99%.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's share 1%
Yeah.
of freedom.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's interesting because I feel that often people are attached to things like supernatural ideas like astrology or tarot cards. And they are attached to it because it's part of their lives. It helps them in some way. It has this, I don't know, like mystical dimension. It helps them sort of frame certain aspects of their lives with narratives, which is a very human thing. It's something that people like to do. I mean, that's why people like, even, I don't know, which Friends character are you quizzes, like, and they try to they people like TV series and they see themselves as a character and they use these characters to say, I'm a Rachel, that's why I do this. People have this tendency, and if it helps them, great. But what I think is, I think ideally, it's because astrology is such a big phenomenon, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. That's why I would dream of a version of astrology that is dissociated from these empirical claims that are just like not true, because at least there are very good reason to believe that they are not true. And I wonder, is it for you personally? Do you imagine yourself, if assuming for the sake of the argument that you really would cease to believe in astrology, you would, let's say we do this experiment together and it turns out that really it didn't work and people are not converging on their guesses of the zodiac sign of the people they interview. And let's say we try something else and we try multiple things and just nothing ever works. Do you see yourself giving up on astrology and saying, oh, okay, if it doesn't work then it's pointless, or do you see still some point in it? Because I think there could be some point in it. Do you imagine yourself not believing in astrology and still being involved in astrology somehow, and not believing the empirical part, but still somehow trying to figure out how to use it as a tool for personal growth?
The thing with those hermeneutic disciplines is that many of them are not so the people who start to be interested in them, they don't get to that point because they made a logical presumption and they got to a point and they said, well, this makes sense, so I choose this.
Yeah,
There's also this subjective interest which comes from a certain level of resonating with a certain language and with uh, a certain
definitely.
way of looking at the world
Yeah.
that later on you start to confirm it. So that's why, from this perspective, I was saying that it won't pass the Karl Popper falsifiability idea, because you confirm something that you start to have an intuition of, and but
Yeah, but that's an internal confirmation, right? You confirm it just for yourself. You don't confirm it for humanity.
yeah, but religion, for instance, who is
Yeah.
a huge a huge deal in
Yeah.
mankind, and that's all in this area of
Yeah.
the subjective feeling, and to
Hmm.
overrule the subjective feeling as not non-important is to let aside some great ways to investigate also truth. Because, for instance, let's say a miracle.
Hmm.
So, as it was the Fatima miracle, you know, that was something.
What was that again? It was a saint that, the image of a saint that, what happened
No,
again?
it was the sun crumbling in the afternoon, at noon. It was in Portugal.
In Portugal, the Fatima miracle. We can look it up. Fatima miracle.
Yeah. So the miracle of the sun is that the Virgin Mary appeared to a few kids, and then she kept on appearing,
Ah,
and
okay.
at some point she told them that in that day, at that hour, the sun will fall from the sky, something like this.
And then what happened?
And it wasn't
It
an
was
eclipse or something like
an
that.
eclipse.
And there were like thousands of people on that field, and it happened. You know,
But it happened.
so
The sun fell. Is that what they claim to have seen?
that's that's why what they perceived.
Okay,
Like
that the sun fell from the sky, just fell down, and it got dark.
it, yeah, and it was like a phenomenon that it was, I don't know, crumbling from. It was anyway
Interesting.
something huge that was
Yeah,
shared by thousands of people, and
interesting.
of course, after such thing that it was put in the front of people. It wasn't just that. Well, I feel inside my heart that I heard that voice.
And you
It
believe
was,
that this actually happened?
well. Look at this. How are we? How do we relate to that?
I mean,
From
first,
what standpoint? From what standpoint you can say, well, I believe or I don't believe something that 10,000 people say that happened in a certain way. Okay, you can say,
it's
okay,
group
there are mass
cohesion.
illusions. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
mass illusion. Exactly. Yeah, collective hysteria.
Yeah, but if we are so strong in our viewpoint, then whatever happens, whatever confirmation can come from this huge number of people, there will be an explanation that says, nah, it cannot be true.
Yeah, but do you think collective hysteria exists, or you think no, it's always actually true what's happening? You know, in witch burnings, it was true, like there were actual witches, and that's good that they were burned.
No.
Okay, so you do acknowledge the existence of this
possibly,
psychological phenomenon.
possibly those were astrologers in a certain point.
Yeah, it could be actually.
I cannot believe it was
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, so you do acknowledge that this real psychological phenomenon, right? This collective hysteria and these things, they exist. We are a
Yes,
collective species.
yes, but we jump very quickly in that possibility. Like you
Yeah.
just jump instantaneously there because you cannot believe that that could be true.
Because
So
that goes against everything that we
yeah,
know, like we have
but
learned so much about the universe, as much as scientific revolutions may happen occasionally, there are some things that we are quite sure of. For example, that the earth is round. Do you believe that the earth is round?
yes, I do.
And how much
And also the Greeks.
exactly? We've known this for a very long time. But still there are flat earthers, and what are you going to say, and if you hear on the news that a group of flat earthers just saw proof that the earth is flat, or they saw a miracle, you will also dismiss it, because I mean, sure, there is a 1% or 0.1% that's open to the possibility that the sun, whatever, but everybody can see the sun. Why is it that only they saw it, and the other people in the rest of Portugal didn't see the sun go away? Like, there are too many things there that you can't explain. So I'm like, sure, maybe it wasn't collective hysteria, maybe it was something else, maybe it was somebody there, a magician who was there tricking the people. This is also a possibility. There are many possibilities, but that a miracle actually happened.
But they are. But if we are truly invested in the discovery of truth,
Yeah.
we shouldn't jump so quickly into the confirmation of our previous thoughts. We should
Hmm.
say, okay, I don't know exactly what happened there. Let me check. I will see. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
but
I'm sure people looked into this. It's just that, I mean, I'm not a sociologist working in Portugal when the miracle happened. If I was, I would go there to try to understand what happened.
it was in 1917, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess there was no sociology back then. I don't know, but probably there
It
was.
was.
I mean, for sure there was. I mean, 1917 is not that far back, but I don't know how. Maybe, although, yeah, back then the scientific method was.
Emil
I mean,
Durkheim, I think
it's
it was.
before Popper, right? So so it's not quite as clear as now what science means, but still, I would definitely have been there to investigate. But now, when somebody says something very outrageous, for example, yeah, then they claim that I talk to a spirit. The existence of spirits is something that goes against so many of the simple assumptions that I make about reality. Like, it goes against the whole theory of evolution,
Okay, but let's.
neurology, neuroscience, it goes against everything we know. Like, all science has to go away to accommodate this,
Wait.
one claim.
Wait a second. Why would the belief in the existence of spirits go against all those sciences?
This
It's
is
a no.
this we've already talked over an hour. I can give you a quick overview of why, but yeah, I think we shouldn't go too deep into this tangent. But basically, I mean, I think that my behavior, my emotions, everything is explained by natural selection. I mean, the people in previous generations who got angry at certain things and got happy on in certain occasions, they evolved those feelings. So, for example, romantic love is something that we have because we reproduce sexually, and we have few offspring, and we need to raise them together. So we fall in love because we tend towards to be a pair bonding species, that we need to stick together for these children to survive. We're not like octopus that just has thousands and thousands of children, and then they die, and they are left to, most of them die, but some survive. So we have to
Okay.
stick together. So everything basically is explained by this. So basically, a spirit would be something that I cannot comprehend, something that
Yes,
doesn't have emotions or anything.
but it's not in connection with the. You can imagine very well to stick to the theory of evolution and to believe in the existence of afterlife. It's not something that.
I don't see how. I mean, sure, there are people who claim to believe
You
that.
Those can
I think
easily
they are.
be mixed together. They are.
I don't think they can. But again, it's a
Yeah.
very deep discussion there. I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour, 20 minutes now. Um, Let me check again from my, just to make sure I'm not forgetting any special question. I mean, I did want to ask you. Yeah, I asked you already what would make you change your mind, and I think that's something that's some soul searching that I really encourage you to do. How confident you are? Yeah, I mean, you were close to 100, but not quite there. So you are open to some degree. And also, somewhere I wanted to go is, would do you think what would do you think would be the social cost for you if you changed your mind? Like, how do you think your career in the Astrologers Association would be affected? Do you think that's maybe a factor that affects how you see these things?
I was thinking about this question because it's somehow interesting. Uh, because those who are professionals in a certain field, so they become really good in that area,
Hmm.
are really invested in that thing,
Exactly.
and the fact that because behind this question lies a certain presupposition that if you it's a lot to be lost socially or
Hmm. Hmm.
on other level if you change your mind, then the reason for which you don't change your mind is because you want to stick on those advantages that you have.
Or at least one of the
But
reasons, yeah.
yeah, but in the same time that makes those really good in certain field, the fact that they invest completely in that field.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow then talk would be uh, well put if no one of those who speak in that talk have anything to lose in that.
Hmm.
So then you have a panel of people who are maybe just from distance interested in some subjects, but they're not really professionals of that subject.
Yeah.
So that's why if you put things in this respect, maybe you cannot take any scientist to have a discussion of this, because if you say what if you're wrong, your assumption that all goes away, and then you
Yeah.
have a lot to lose.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm investing in that, and I know more about that because I care about that.
Yeah, but my point is that, if in science this shouldn't happen ideally. It's true that it does happen. Some people do get invested in their theories, and they are reluctant to acknowledge a certain falsifying data. But it's also true that it happens less in science than in other fields. Richard Dawkins has in one of his books this story about some scientist who was in a conference where he was also, and a young scientist, came with a whole presentation that, changing and that went against the status quo, and he presented these new theories, and he had quite solid evidence. And then there was some professor who came down, and who was some old professor who came down and said, "I've been studying this for 15 years, and I have to say that I was wrong all this time. Thank you for showing me." And everybody applauded, because in science, this principle, of being open to change your mind and being always open to new data, is a very important principle. So it's part of people's identity. That's why I would say that, we all have many identities. Like, you're an astrologer, but you're also into Tantra yoga, and you're, who knows what else. You like a certain type of music, you like a certain type of food. And I think that the one thing that should always be at the top on our list of identities is this possibility to change our mind. Because if we are vocal and very open about it and transparent, and people associate this idea with us, then this minimizes the cost for us to change our mind. So yeah.
Okay, but let's say let's put it like this. You probably put a lot of emphasis in the importance of logical thinking.
Hmm.
Uh, could you imagine being wrong
I mean,
in
being
this?
about logical thinking. I mean,
Yes,
it's a
yes,
very,
like it's not valuable. It's not valuable. You should guide yourself to through science. You should do
yeah, be
uh,
more like artsy,
yeah,
somehow
and
more
no
intuitive,
logic,
more
no
trust more
logic at
intuition. Yeah, I mean,
no,
this
no.
is something. It's not even a matter of being right or wrong. I mean, this is just how I work, and I know there are people who are more intuitive and more. And it's true that these people tend to believe things that I don't believe. But I also know people who do have this other way of, all this other uh, type of brain, let's say, or type of functioning, and they are also skeptics. I mean, they don't believe in certain things, empirically, but they still are into it. They like the aesthetics of, tarot and astrology. There is this YouTuber I found the other day, a secular witch or a skeptical witch or something like this, that was telling people how to use tarot for self-growth and without the supernatural aspects. So I think it's possible. But for me, it's just not how I work. But it's not so much a matter of belief.
I think that's worse, because when we do that, it's exactly that you cut the principles, but you keep the techniques, because they can be fun, but then afterwards you draw a conclusion in the truth area from that, starting not believing in the principles, and that's more dishonest.
It's not that it's dishonest, I mean, they are very clear that, look, I think this is useful for me. It helps me explore certain things. There are some studies about this. I will send you afterwards, and I'll also add all the links about the things that we discussed in the description. But yeah, there are people who, even in a clinical setting, there are therapists that are starting to experiment with tarot, even without necessarily condoning the supernatural aspects of it.
Yeah, but this is like saying I believe in prayer, but I don't believe in
In God.
God, or in a supernatural power.
Yeah.
But I believe in prayer. Yes, it's pretty much the same.
And I think it has been shown that prayer works in some degree, like it makes people feel better, etc. But why do you think it's a bad thing?
Because uh, what's then the act of prayer? You just do an incantation that puts your mind at peace, and that's it.
That's the whole thing about science. Science, every new discovery also comes with new questions. So we once we find out that okay, tarot seems to work in therapy sometimes, then the question becomes, or in the case of prayer, yeah, to make it easier. So it works. So let's see exactly what works about it. Is it the sitting? Is it the meditation? So you compare with meditation, or does it help to say something? I don't know. Certain religions has this the mantras or whatever. So maybe mumbling something also helps. And then we start to narrow down and figure out exactly which aspects of prayer are relevant and which are not. But
Yes,
right
true,
now we don't know. It's
true.
true. We don't know yet.
True, and that's like keeping alive the spirit of quest, and searching to see what's
Mhm.
there, because it was also done with the mantras that people saw clearly that doing Laya yoga, it helps. But
Mhm.
then there were people, because there are many mantras who open different aspects in the consciousness,
Mhm.
and then people were saying, well, wait a second, it cannot be in connection with the mantra that is something truly
Mhm.
connecting a higher
Yeah.
reality. It has to be in connection with the fact of uttering in a certain way word
Mhm.
or connection of words, and that's it. Uh,
Yeah.
but okay, and it was a conclusion. But if you go further on, then you can see that different type of mantras make people feel differently. And here we come back
Mhm.
to the personal and subjective input of people, because in the meditation field there you can say
Mhm.
what they feel. It's not just
Mhm.
you measure what is being activated in the brain, and that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, anyway, we went quite beyond
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
scope
We
of the
went quite.
discussion.
Yeah. And we are almost an hour and a half now. So I think it's a good moment to. I mean, if you have anything else to add, any closing remarks?
Well, I think that is very important to be open-minded
Mhm.
with the things that you practice, the things you believe in,
Mhm.
and to to try and to pursue
Mhm.
your interests, but
Mhm.
having this open mind, because otherwise I completely believe that you can get misled in all sorts of false doctrines,
Mhm.
and there are many situations like this. But in the same time, there is a very complex um, domain that is astrology also is a part of,
Mhm.
that is in connection with aspects that are not so easily um, put into an equation, you know.
Yeah.
And I think also this has to be taken into consideration, the deep feelings that people have. It's not like often we put the intuition in opposition with reason, and in a Cartesian manner we say, of course, reason is superior to this intuition. But there are different types of intuition. It can be certain way of guessing that people that things are like this, and then you experience a sort of a magical world where everything is signs, and but that could be also a delusion. But there is also a superior type of intuition when you actually know things beyond what the logic tells you, and that's not coming from the same area as the delusive one. And the human psychic is a very broad area of investigation, and it can be investigated with different type of tools.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel the need to respond to a few things, because I agree that intuition has value. And I mean, the conversation about the philosophy of science didn't die with Popper. I mean, he kind of started this sort of a whole tradition of critical rationalism. There are Popper himself and other more recent authors, they think about knowledge creation as basically a process of creativity, a process of making guesses, of speculation, and in this part of and criticism. So conjecture and criticism, and basically you come up with ideas and you test them. And this process of coming up with ideas is very reliant on intuitions, and is very reliant on all sorts of artistic processes. And that's where I think this mode of functioning is very valuable. Something that perhaps I lack even in my way of functioning, because maybe I'm too logical. But I think we can work together if we do this separation of concerns, and we use our intuition and this more artsy or more, let's say, less logical part of us. We use that to come up with ideas and to be creative. But then the logical part has to come after that to filter out what's wrong and what's right. And that's where I think science comes in. Again, we are almost over an hour and a half now, and thank you so much. And besides you have something else to respond?
No, you're welcome, and it was a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, and you mentioned you have some other projects, and I mean, if you want to tell people about other interests of yours, where can they find more information about you? You said you want to start a podcast also.
Yeah, we'll start a podcast which will be named Continuous Transformation. And it was interesting that you invited me to this podcast, and just tomorrow we start filming it.
That's cool.
So if people will want to follow, then I think this name in Romanian, Transformare Continuă, can be searched on YouTube, but
definitely. I mean, I will, again, you can send me all the links later, and I'll add everything to the description.
Okay.
Yeah, so, well, thanks so much for joining me for this third episode of this experiment. And yeah, keep in touch.
Thank you, and good luck with your project.